as a heading, we will have to use the appropriate text tag for that. Let's look at Chapter 2 for that information. In Chapter 2, we have specific tags that we should use for headings, and depending on the level of heading that it is, we would have to use the appropriate one. In this case, we want to use the one that's for the main heading, the main idea for a particular page. In this case, we'll use H1. So go back to your code and we'll start a new line. There's our opening H1 tag. And just to get in the habit, go ahead and create the closing H1 tag. That would be a / and then the name of the tag. That way you don't forget. Now we can put in the information. A simple sample web page. Once again, here's an example of an HTML element. In this case, this is an H1 element. This is the opening tag. Here's the closing tag. And then enclosed within the opening and closing H1 tags would be the content. Next, we have this paragraph. It says the image below, this one right here, uses a relative link. This means that the web browser is looking for this image relative to where this HTML file lives. That should be lives. Relative links are used to link to files on the same web page. I will talk more about relative links, but first, let's go ahead and add this paragraph. Going back to our Chapter 2 PDF, we need to figure out the correct tag to use for paragraphs of text. In this case, we're not going to use headings because it's not a heading. What we need to use for paragraphs would be the P tag. P for paragraph. We'll do that here. There's my opening P tag. And we will go ahead and add the closing P tag so we don't forget. And since I have all this information here, I'm going to go ahead and cheat so that we can save a little bit of time on this video. I will just copy and paste, except I'll make that one change here. That should be HTML file lives. And there's our paragraph right there. Now, before I get to adding this image and then explaining what a relative link is, this will be a good time to go ahead and save this HTML file. So go to File, Save, and depending on what plain text editor you're using, you might have to do a couple of extra steps if this doesn't work out for you. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to email me so I can help you out with that. But for the most part, most of you should be good to go. Just don't forget to put in .html. We will call this your last name. So I'm putting in last name, but again, please use your actual last name dash lab dash 1b. And save this HTML in the same folder where you have that web.jpg file. For this to work, make sure that this HTML file that you just saved, make sure to put that in that lab-1b folder that you created in the previous video, which already contains the web.jpg file. Then when you're ready, let's go ahead and preview this page. Now you could just double click, but then that will open it in your default web browser. For this class, I would like for you, or for all of us, to agree on using Google Chrome. You can right click on that HTML file and then say open with, and then choose Google Chrome. Now, if your computer does not have Google Chrome, go ahead and download that so that you can view your web pages for this class using Google Chrome. And your page should look something like this. Depending on your screen size, you may have your paragraph to where it's 2 lines of text or maybe 3. But generally speaking, this is what your page should look like right now. We have our heading and then a paragraph. We still have some stuff to add to this, but we'll get to that. But for now, this is what your web page should look like. Okay, now let's add this web.jpg image right here. Go back to our code. To add images to a web page, we use the IMG element. Now, this IMG element would be an example of a tag that is self-closing. Not all elements consist of opening and closing tags. Here is a list of some of the more common HTML tags that do not have what you would consider opening and closing tag. They are self-closing elements, and I did not put that on this list, but an IMG element is one of those. To add an IMG element, we will use for this class, starting off, 4 different attributes. Now remember, attributes provide more information about an element. In this case, by having the 4 different attributes to this IMG element, we're going to be able to provide more information for the web browser to work with. And the 4 different attributes that we will add to this IMG element are src, width, height, and alt. Let's start with src. src would be the source. This is the part where you tell your web browser where to find this particular image. So that's src equals, and then 2 double quotes right there. Inside the double quote, as I mentioned in the paragraph before this one, we will use a relative link. A relative link is one where it is relative to wherever this HTML file is. In this case, we can just type in web.jpg. And when we do something like that, your web browser sees that and says, oh, I need to look for a web.jpg file in the same folder as last name lab 1b.html. And that's exactly what we have going on here. They are indeed in the same folder. That's an example of a relative link.